Oh, yes. Here we are, back in high G's for another JFDI podcast. And I've got a little bit of a surprise for you tonight as well. So, just as a reminder, actually, let me start like this. First of all, thank you very much for everybody that has tuned in for the last number of podcasts, whether or not you've watched them live or whether you've watched them catching up. So a big thank you to everybody that's tuned in, and obviously a massive thanks to Colin, to Gary, to Pat, to Kevin. You're going to love me calling you that, aren't you? To Hammy, to Nick, to Paul last week, and to this evening's guest, and our upcoming guests. So I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight, just as a little treat. But before I do, what do you think of this? What do you think of the new? See, I'm on the camera's back. What do you think of the new logo for Force Forward? Do you like it? Let me know what you think. We might have some merch here. All right, Stephen, how you doing, mate? Yeah, look, what do you think? This is the back. Thoughts? Bit of merch. Anybody interested in how we came up with this logo? Because there's a good story behind it. Anyway, on with the show. Gym, daily juicing, daily ice baths, and movement going great. Day 30 today out of 40, so only 10 days left. The next person that you're going to see caught me as I was tucking into this, so if you can see it. So it's juice in a bar. Just gives you a little bit of texture. Look, it's green. It's all right. But anyway, 10 days left. Feeling brilliant. I'll do another video on that. Give you some data, some statistics on the things, like how much weight's gone, how many minutes I've spent in the ice bath, and how many miles I've covered. But we're all good on it. We're all good. I've been quiet because I've been doing a bit of the Jason Vale retreat this week, which has been brilliant. But anyway, listen, enough of me yapping. I promised you a little surprise. We've got next week, we'll be speaking to Mr. Stephen O'Neill, Squadron Leader O'Neill, to you. So we are. And the week after that, on April Fool's Day, we've got this man. I'm going to just give you a little teaser. Look who's coming on April Fool's Day. Hello, mate.
Hello. How are you all?
You all right?
I'm very well, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good. We've not done this before, have we? Just a little teaser. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. What can you say in 5 seconds? You looking forward to the 1st of April?
I'm looking forward to Mo's interview. Really looking forward to it. Like I say, I still expect to be sat here at 2 a.m. listening to his stories. So
I have to keep him to an hour.
No,
right,
yeah.
Listen. I can't wait. Are you going to change? One question for you tonight. Are you going to change your selection of tunes again?
Probably. There's so many, isn't there? There's so many songs. There's so many, and it's difficult to get it to 4.
Yeah,
so
it is. It's tough.
The only one that won't change is Mel and Kim, Respectable. The other 3 might, but that one definitely won't change.
Right. Take it easy. Enjoy the show. Good to see you. Speak to you later on.
Nice to see everybody. Looking forward to it.
Right then, here we go. That was Mr. Paul Blades, for anybody that didn't know. As he said, I'd better bring tonight's guest in, because that's almost 5 minutes of an intro. What can I say about this guy? Do you know what? The easiest thing is to let him say it himself. I first met him at RAF Bucking back in 1990. And we had a brilliant chat last night. We went through his songs, and he made me listen to them all last night. and then went through the stories that you're all about to hear tonight, and I was creased up laughing. We actually probably spent longer last night going through this than we will tonight. Well, maybe not if Blades is right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the one and only Paul Mo Morris. Good evening. How are you?
Evening all, as they say. No, I'm good, mate. I'm good, as we've just discussed in the green room. And I'll leave it till later, but I know the track.
You know the track?
Yes. I ran off, had a quick sort through the CDs, found it, and I went, that's the one.
Oh, what? The one that I mentioned just before?
That we've just talked about in the green room.
All right, okay. You know the one.
I know the one, but I don't want to spoil that story.
Well, I tell you what. Why don't we crack on with your first choice? Because otherwise, we might be here. We might be here for hours.
Could be.
Yeah. Let's get into your first song. What I loved last night was the intros, and there was a couple of them that I was like, but good, long sort of building intros, and this one is a cracking start to a tune, and it's a good opener for tonight. Blondie, Heart of Glass. So,
what do I say? I mean, obviously, as we know, I'm a little bit older than you guys, a year or two older. So this is really straight from school and my days at school, where really, as a 13, 14-year-old boy, Debbie Harry was every boy's dream.
Yeah.
And we had many a chat amongst us in science lessons, in the art lessons, any lessons really, anything to do other than do the work we were supposed to, whether it be about music, whether it be about football, whether it just be, just being lads in general. And but the one thing that we would all kind of set on was a bit of Blondie and, Heart of Glass. And as I said to you last night, mate, all my tunes come down to the intros. And as I'm sure everybody else has done when they've been on here, it's murder trying to get it down to 5 songs. And it's just as like I said, mate, an intro that takes me immediately to that place. But the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and that's it. So that was it, and as I said to you, when I was at school, it was really a structured environment that set me up for the next 7 years afterwards. Right. That and really where those ideas were born. I was always, from a young kid, going to go and join the military. My dad didn't want me in the army.
What age did you know?
And a couple of my mates were talking, and they said, well, what about the Air Force? I went, yeah, all right. That sounds all right.
What age did you know you wanted to join?
Oh, from about 6 or 7 years old.
Really, that young?
Yeah. Oh, mate, absolutely. Everybody knew in my family I was going to be in the military. What
do you think? Where did that come from?
Right. Well, not to spoil a certain book by a well-known author, not a million miles away.
Right.
My granddad.
Ah, right.
I mean, I grew up, and my granddad, who fought in the war in India and in Burma.
Yeah.
A little bit like the character's grandfather, and just sat there listening to his stories. Sat there listening to his stories. That may be where I get it from.
Yeah, it's so that bit of that bit in the book was very, I'm guessing, resonated a lot with you then.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I you know, when I kind of, because I'm an audiobook man, so when I was listening to it, I immediately thought this is almost like a parallel story.
Yeah. Look, there you go, mate. We'll just do that and get it out of the way, shall we?
Get the plug in. Why not?
Yeah. The disappearingscotsman.com. Another sale today. Another sale. Yes. Alan Didlick. Name ring a bell?
Didster.
Yeah.
Last time I saw Dids was at Davies Top Table.
That was, I think, the last
2017, 4 years ago. In fact, 4 years ago, it must be virtually to the week, mate.
It was, because it was March. It was. Yeah. That was what you call a top table, that, right?
I would say, I mean, and I said it at the time, that it reminded me. Sorry, mate?
About 175 people there, do you reckon?
Oh, frightening. There'll be somebody on here that probably can tell us exactly. But I think it was over 200. I would say it was over 200.
It wouldn't be surprised. There's a couple
and that's only at the meal. That's not including everybody that rocked up in the bar afterwards.
Yeah, that's true.
Frankie Blunden.
Yeah.
Oh, my old neighbour.
And we're being Gary Barlow's not watching. We're being trumped by a Zoom quiz. Oh well.
That's fine. That's fine. That's locked away.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I wonder. Do you think? There we go. We need to maybe just work my way through the people that were there, starting with Mr. Davy Kinnaird himself, and see if we can get him on as a guest.
Oh, mate, just what an absolute legend! What and that's a an overused word at times, but not in the case of that gentleman.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You know, I don't know if I said to you, mate, but I kind of thought at the time is this what your own funeral is like? Everybody you'd ever known in your life in one room at the same time.
Yeah, it's quite a chipper thought, mate.
Between that and Belfast, I don't think there's too many people that I missed out on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'd say you're Mr. James. Mr. Sparky.
Sparky. Yeah.
He wasn't either. And there was I was thinking about this before we started, and I was trying to think who the other one was. But there was somebody else, I couldn't think of it off the top of my head. In fact, no, Marky P was there, wasn't he?
No,
that's the other name I had, was Marky P. And you know why I've said that?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. We'll get to it. Shall we move on to your next song?
Yeah, we better add, otherwise we will be here for all 6 episodes, as Blazy predicted.
U2, Where the Streets Have No Name. Another great intro. And that was a great song. I
mean, great song, great intro. If I'm right, an amazing video. Was that the one that filmed on the top of the building as a live gig, and they ended up with the police. They ended up with the police having to shut down the whole shoot for it. Yeah, that rings a bell. Bell. Yeah, Blazy's nodding in the green room. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, couple of reasons for this. Post sort of Blondie and like I said, kind of the other bands around that time. Undertones, Sex Pistols. The next progression in my music life was really the likes of U2, Simple Minds, and those sort of bands that just kind of really drove my musical influences, my musical likes, and particularly Where the Streets Have No Name, opening track to probably my favourite ever album, The Joshua Tree. And at a time I'd just joined the Air Force. I had just I'd been in about a year, and then I was posted at Saxa Ford, and that was a whole new game. So I always remember. And my flight sergeant when I was at Neatishead, and I have to give him there's quite a few people that I want to talk about tonight, because sadly this man passed on very recently. A guy called Taff Nicholas, who anybody knows him, was my first flight sergeant, and I read that he'd passed on quite recently, and quite possibly one of the nicest people I ever got to meet in the Air Force. But he sat me down, and I'd been in a year, and he said, so where do you want to go for your next posting? I said, well, I quite fancy Saxa. A couple of lads had gone. I thought that was it. So that was around, I would say, January time. Middle of March came up. I got called in the office and told, you're going to Saxa Ford. Completely out of the blue. 3 weeks notice. Some boy had been basically booted out, and so they had to get somebody up there sharpish, and so off I went.
Do you know why? Do you know who had been booted out and why?
I do know the name. It's nobody from our era though, mate.
Right.
I'm talking 87 here.
Yeah, these kind of things always interest me.
Yeah, what I can tell you in sort of the particular style of that location was, and the sort of people knocking around those days was, I believe that, and if someone like Growler's on, Growler might know the boy, but this guy was, he got himself, he was working his ticket, because back in those days you had to pay to get out and wait 18 months. So people were quite imaginative in ways they could get themselves out a little bit sharper than 18 months and $1,000.
All right, okay.
And this guy had been, I think he'd been down to Colchester or whatever, and then come back up, and had named himself the Cooler King. To the point,
the Cooler King.
Yes. To the point that apparently, and this is all apparent because obviously I wasn't there at the time, that he would go into the naffy with a baseball glove and a baseball, sit on the floor and bounce it off the floor, a la Steve McQueen in The Great Escape.
Yeah. Strange.
I mean, some of the characters I met early on, pre the days I got to booking, just therein lies a whole load of stories that, I mean, we could spend all night going on. But
indeed. So Saxa Ford.
Great tour. The great tour, with one exception, is that I bust my knee playing football quite seriously. Ended up with an operation about a year later. But why The Streets Have No Name and that album particularly is because I had to spend a lot of time just sat around not being able to do anything. And I would just lie in my room at night, the window open in the summer at midnight, and the sun is still blaring through the windows just about. And that album, which was very much the album of the time, just blaring away in the block.
Whilst you recovered.
Whilst I recovered.
I remember a spell like that at Buchan, where I had done my knee in skiing, and I wasn't allowed, to work because I had I had a cast, a full stookie, big.
Oh yeah, kind of rings a bell.
Yeah, it was like from my ankle right almost up to the top of my leg, and so I couldn't go to work to start with, and I'd stay in the house, except I wasn't staying in the house, and I kind of spent my days whilst I was sick playing on. I think it was probably the Mega Drive at that point, or the Mega CD upgrade. And Mr. Pattinson, amongst others, Mr. Osborne, Mr. Blades possibly as well, would come round to the house and accompany me down to the Sea View on crutches. And until Greg Meach got wind of the fact that I'd been out. And then he found me a job in the gym. He phoned me up one day, Pinky. He was like, "I found you a job." I was like, "I've got a job, but I can't do it." And he was like, "That's a load of bollocks." He's like, "I know what you've been doing."
What was that? You ended up as Pete Jones's T-boy?
Well, basically, no, I had a brilliant job. What they did was they had me phoning up people who were late on their fitness test. So anybody that had to come down and do their bleep test and they hadn't like been down, I had to phone them up. Guess what? 95% officers. I'd be like, "Hello, squadron leader so-and-so. You need to come down to the gym. I'm on the phone. When could we possibly get you slotted in for your fitness test?" And they would be like, "Richardson, is that you? What are you doing down there?" Oh, I loved it. I didn't let people.
I bet you did.
I did not let people go until they booked in a date. And because I was there for so long, loads of them came down, and they would all like walk past me and see me in the office. They'd be like, "Ah, you twat." Anyway, yes. So, moving on from Saxa Vord, then, is there anything to add to elaborate on the U2 stuff in Saxa? Or?
Yeah, just we discussed last night that I finally, when I went overseas, I got to see them, and I kind of looked where I was going to go. There was a couple of places from where I was posted at the time. And I'd always fancied going to Berlin, and they happened to be playing in Berlin. And obviously the connection with them recording there made it just... Growler's in the house. I went on my first ever date with Growler, and him and Kev Bowers gave me hell. I went as a young LAC on the train all the way from Neat up to Kinloss.
All right.
And I think I was their entertainment. Let's see how drunk we can get the LAC. And they did a good job, to be fair.
I'll bet they did.
But so seeing U2 in Berlin, and actually when I was hunting round for tracks, I discovered that the whole gig is still available. You can just download the tracks from it and listen to the tracks from it. So I'm going to do that at some point.
Nice. Oh, there you go. Little treat for you.
Little treat for me.
Yeah. Whereabouts can you get it downloaded?
I can't remember. I can send you the link, mate. When because I just googled it. I just googled, U2 Berlin.
Yeah.
What year was it? 2009, I want to say.
Right. Oh wow, 2009, eh?
No Line on the Horizon tour.
Nice. And how was it?
Amazing. Olympic Stadium in Berlin, which was rocking. And as a little side, a bit of Snow Patrol thrown in as the warm up.
Nice.
Which was
Mr. Lightbody and the gang.
Sorry, mate.
Mr. Lightbody and the gang.
Oh, absolutely. And another group that ended or were very close to being included tonight.
Yeah. Some good songs, those. But some of the some real sing-alongs. A certain Snow Patrol song used to get. It was amongst about 3 or 4 songs that an old friend of mine used to serenade me with after usually a couple of bottles of wine on a Friday night when if I said been out at usually a police function. And he would be coming home, and he'd phone me up.
Would this individual happen to have been in the police?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And had been a resident of, or a citizen more of Northern Ireland. Maybe not then.
No.
Maybe I'm thinking somebody different.
No.
It wasn't Mr. Doherty then.
No, but he was a good friend of Mr. Doherty's. It was Mr. Leonard. He used to.
That was choice number 2. It was going to be Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, he used to. He would phone me up, and sorry, I'm just adjusting the blanket in here. Sorry. Yeah, he used to phone me up, and he would sing. It would be there was Chasing Cars. Chasing Cars was one of the favourites, and Fix You. I'd like answer the phone, and I'd be like, "Oh, here we go." Great. Anyway, right. So we'll move on. We'll move on to your third song. We're doing all right for time. We're cool.
It's all right then.
We're all good. However, I feel some of the the big stories are coming up. Anyway,
Very soon.
Indeed. So we've got Black Box and Ride on Time.
Probably the track that changed my life, but not a particularly song that I would say was great or anything. But as I explained when we were chatting last night, is a song from a particular weekend. Whilst after Saxavord, as many know, I went off to Northern Ireland, to Bishop's Court, which was a bit of a laugh for a while. And somebody came up one day and said, "How do you fancy going on a football tour for the weekend?" Well, anything like that was, get away, go and have a laugh, a few beers, bit of football was a bit of a no-brainer. And he said, "It's to Buchan." I went, "Well, that's all right. I've never been to Buchan before. Sounds like a good gig." And my junior NCO at the time was quite enthusiastic that I should join him on this tour. So off we went to RAF Buchan on a football tour from Bishop's Court with somebody a few people might know, Dave Pearce, who was my corporal at the time, and off we went. And it was funny because it was just, I wasn't really thinking too much about it. And I'd been at Bishop's about a year, and people were saying, "Well, where are you going to go next?" Because I only had another year left. And my boss at the time was saying, "Right, Mo," he says, and I'd gone quite quickly. I'd done 13 months at NEAT. I'd done 18 months at Saxa. I would have done 2 years at Bishop's. And I was kind of just drifting around, and I wasn't really getting into Emma Mystery. Hello. How are you doing? It's just that I see them come up, people I've maybe not spoken to for a while. So yeah, and my boss at the time was saying, "Look, you really need to think about what you're going to do next." And he said, "Look, I think Buchan," and I'd always gone, "Nah, don't fancy it. Too far away.
Too cold."
And off I went. We played football. So I won't go into a lot of the stories because I could get myself into a lot of trouble. But we had a. Sorry.
Tell what you want, mate. Crack on.
Well, the first one, we didn't think we were being particularly noisy, but apparently the guard did think we were being quite noisy on the train, and we continued on. And we were heading towards Aberdeen. We'd just gone past Arbroath, and going past Arbroath was quite significant because the guard reappeared with a shocked look on his face because he'd expected us to disembark at Arbroath. Because he'd assumed we were a group of Royal Marine Commandos. Well, bear in mind that Dave Pearce is exactly the same size as me, and we are not exactly the tallest of people. Dave, I think, told the guard that he wasn't a Marine, he was an ex-para, but he'd had a couple of bad jumps
and lost a few inches.
But we got to, and it's funny because I've heard obviously a lot of the stories over the last few weeks about guys arriving at Buchan and the journey when they've been posted there. And obviously we didn't have any of that, but we got off at Aberdeen train station, realised that there was a while to wait for the bus. So if you're a football team and you've got a bag of balls and a big space that the Aberdeen train station was, well, you're going to go and play five-a-side. So off we went and played a bit of five-a-side until we were asked to leave there.
In the station?
In the station. Got on the bus, got ourselves up to Buchan. Yeah, the rest is really pretty much a little bit hazy. We ended up into town on the Thursday night. Friday we had a bit of a training session and then a game. And we played, some of the guys might know, Buchanhaven Hearts, who were one of the local teams. We played them. And I always remember that because I remember there was a couple of guys on the touchline who were clearly RAF guys. And that I later came to know to be Johnny Beckett, and another person had a real big influence on me and my life and my career, which was Billy Crawford. And they were running the team, and they'd come down to sort of like scout us and have a bit of a look, which was really a waste of time because we were even less capable of playing football the following day when we played them.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we played on the Saturday, and it was the first time probably when I met a couple of other guys who we all know, Des Carr and John Kane, who I found out that I played against later on. That many years later, in all honesty, yeah. And but. In part, and you asked me last night, right? Is this your memory of the G? And as I explained to you, we never actually made it into the G. We weren't allowed in, strangely. But we went into another establishment in Peterhead called Drummond's, which was, as I later found out, a bit of a no-go for the RAF. And but the manager of the team said, "Oh, it's all right. I know the manager here." So that's where we drank, and the big tune, and my nod to dance music was Black Box Ride on Time, and that forever is my first real impression of Peterhead. And strangely, I had such a good time that I thought, I fancy I go and having a look at this, and I consequently did a few days later. But the big thing, obviously, was, as I said to you last night, mate, was for our penance, me and Mr. Pearce had to do a night shift the following night, which was a little bit lively. The first night we got back, our night shift was a little bit lively, and some local people decided to chuck a few bombs over the fence, and life became a little less fun, shall we say?
That was just for anybody that doesn't know. Just that was, you were at Bishop's Court at the time over in Ireland, right?
Yeah.
And that was you returning from detachment on Buchan, went in for a night shift, and then this was a very famous bombing at the time that kind of sent Bikini Alert states sort of flying.
I mean, it sent everything going all over the place, and but predominantly for me, it just, it was a good gig, good laugh. We had a real good, solid group of lads there, real good, fun lads that enjoyed a laugh, and it kind of took the fun out of it a little bit. And as a consequence of that, we changed the shifts, and we basically, because we couldn't do anything. And then one of the parts of that was the fact that we ended up getting 10 days off a month because of the shifts, just straight 2, 2 and 2 rather than 2, 2 and 4. And then we were stuck for things to do. And I'd said, after I'd spoken to my boss, I said, actually, I do quite fancy Buchan. And he said, well, why don't you go over for a couple of days and have a look around, see what it's like? And I rocked up. And I knew a couple of people. In fact, the first night there, I met quite a few people, because by that time Mick Brownlee was there, and who I'd been in Ireland with, and Mick took me around to meet some people. And I always remember one of the people the people that I met first there was your good lady wife, who was in the WAF block with Bernie. Who else was? I'm trying to think of the girls that were there. There was Bernie, there was her, there was Vanessa, there was a couple of others. Trying to think who it was. Joe Mack.
Yeah.
So it was obviously all the A-Watch girls that I met, and then I kind of consequently went out, met a few other people, and just got on with everybody. Found everybody to be a good laugh. Everybody was up for a bit of a party. You got into work, everybody, played the game in work. And consequently, I ended up doing a few more, which I think my second or third trip over there. And ironically, a certain Mr. Jock Thompson, another big influence on my life and my career, had rung up my boss at Bishops and said, well, he seems a good lad. He's welcome over any time. And so I took him up on the offer, and I remember, I think it was the second time I came over, and talking to a couple of lads, and they were like, "Oh, there's 2 new lads here. They're proper off their heads." So, what do you mean? I said, "Well, at the moment they're off running around the camp on scooters."
Who the hell was that?
Well, it was a certain Mr. Blades and a Mr. Richardson. And that, I said to you last night, mate, that was my first introduction to yourself. Is that I didn't actually remember meeting you. I just remember hearing about you.
Whose idea was that, flipping with the scooters?
It'll be Blades' idea.
I think we had some spare money, didn't we? We bought them from Aberdeen.
I remember having them on the bus.
I think we've been drinking on a day session with this.
No, never.
Anyway, right. So, oops.
Fast forward to April the
1st. So you ended up coming back, didn't you?
I just ended up coming back time and time again. It was quite funny because initially we were up at NFL at the time, and then then you moved down to the bottom site.
Bottom site, yeah.
Where I think Dave Pearce had found himself a young lady in Peterhead, so he used to say, well, just come over and you can crash in my room, except I didn't have the keys. And unfortunately, there was some young lad who'd broken his leg, who lived at the front of the block. Right. I used to tap on his window and say, mate, let me in. Sorry?
Let you into the...
Yeah, well, he actually got his revenge not long after that, in the years following that, by blasting out his decks and waking everybody up. It could have been James Heather, yeah, quite possibly.
There you go. So I've got a question that I wrote this one down when we first spoke about you coming on here. It's a good place to ask it. I think just everything said and done, and given the sort of scene that you've set in and around, how you moved to Buchan, but how did that tour, how did that, how did things change after Bishop's Court for you?
Yeah, I suppose, without wanting to, over dramatize it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like everything, and kind of, I suppose in subconsciously it threw my
mate, can I whilst you're just thinking there, I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't think anything that you can say, and this is just my view, is going to over dramatize the fact that you were in the building when it was bombed as part of a terrorist attack. How do you over dramatize that?
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, it's something I still laugh about now, because when it happened, I have quite vivid memories of it. I didn't realise glass bent that far before it broke. That's what, because there were these big windows in the mess, and they bent quite a bit before they broke, and I didn't realise glass bent that far. And then the second thing was, because it was mortars, and the first couple went off, and I thought I thought the chef's done something in the kitchen. I thought he'd blown something up, because it was just like, I went, chef. So I went through to go and have a look, and I thought, and then more came, and I thought, oh. So yeah, but I think it just kind of, you know, I just realised that actually life can be quite short if you're unlucky and in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that was really why I went to Buchan, because I'd seen, or I enjoyed Buchan that much, because it was a great social life. Work was a minor inconvenience at Buchan, but the social life was just brilliant. Just a brilliant group of guys who worked hard and played hard.
Did it change? What happened? Did it kind of change your outlook or your approach to like work, play, life in general in any way, shape, or form?
What happened at Bishops?
Yeah.
No, not really. Not really. Once the initial, I'd say for the obviously the next couple of days were a bit shaky, but after that, and I do think it's this whole, you know, this spirit that you get from the Air Force and the military, of just crack on with it. You know, it's happened. We're all safe. Nobody's died. You just crack on with it.
Yeah.
You know, that's really how I looked at it, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it's one of those things that that to be of the mindset to join the military, you have to expect the worst, because you know, at any point, and I guess particularly being posted there, you know, the brief that you get when you go, you're in a very volatile sort of place. So it's, you know, whilst it's not expected, it's one of those things, like you say, you know. And I was never in that myself.
You know, it's not something that comes completely out of the blue, because you kind of expected it.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, they'd petrol bombed, I think, the main gate about 3 days before I'd arrived, a year before. So these things just happen, and you know, you dust yourself down and you just get on with it. You know, and very much, you know, of the moment, just dust yourself down and crack on with it, because you know, it could be worse.
I guess that's that whole approach has stood us in pretty good stead for the last year or so.
Oh, exactly, mate. You know, exactly, and it is just one of those things, and you know, you've got to get on with it. There's no point in moaning about it. Just crack on, and you know, I know it's difficult for a lot of people. I know, you know, people don't get to see families, don't get to see their friends as much as they would like to. But you know, I have to say a big thank you to you at this point, because I think the last year, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this, who will listen to this, will probably join me in. And as I've said to you before, it's that you've facilitated it. You know,
it's needed. And you know, I mean, I'm not, yeah, it's.
I wouldn't disagree with that, mate. You know, but you facilitated it. Nobody else has. Nobody else has.
You know why? It's because I love doing it. I wouldn't do it.
Absolutely, and I know that, and I know there's no, you know, and that's the thing. That's the thing when you get to really know people, and you've shared that experience that we have, and you know, and I don't just mean you and me. I'm talking about the people that will be watching this tonight, or the vast majority of people. You know, I will, and I'm sure you will have done, have great memories of working and playing and whatever in some very weird and unusual places around the globe.
Yeah.
No shit. And that's what it for me, it just boils down to.
Yeah. It does. You never know. Maybe some of the people that have watched some of the some of the episodes will think about joining us when we can. Given that we've just been talking about Northern Ireland, that once we can get back over there.
Well, and that's, we kind of come around again to that just, we talked about Davy's top table, 200 odd people, but equally that weekend in Belfast, and just before everything kind of happened, and just an amazing weekend, absolutely just, I was blown away by the whole thing. I was absolutely blown away by the whole thing.
Yeah, it was
Knoxy. Right. What stories have I got about John Knox? John Knox, do you want me to tell them about the sink? Mate, so as I showed you last night, I'll see what Knoxy comes back with. It's nothing disgraceful. It's just a humorous tale of a sink.
Oh, I think if Knoxy doesn't answer and somebody else does answer and says that they want to hear the sink tale, then
it's just one of many stories from a Cyprus detachment.
Go on.
We just happened. I think it was not. I'm sure it was Knoxy. It was definitely Archie, the chef from Bulmer. Anybody knows, and we were staggering back to our accommodation. Oh, Jugsy. Hello, Jugsy. What a man. And we were staggering back, and Archie decided that, after a night on the beer, he needed just a moment to himself just to, before we moved any further forward, disappeared into the bushes. And me and Oxy had just stood there, and and all of a sudden we can hear this. Right, so that is one person you're very familiar with. Who do you think that is?
Hat.
Who's like? In fact, you sound exactly like him there.
Jock Thompson.
Jock Thompson.
Yeah,
honestly.
Did he not have his beret on?
It might have been Knoxy that didn't have his hat on. It could have been any one of us. He didn't care. We all made sure we had the hat on. Anyway, Archie disappears into the bushes. Yes, it was John Knox to Bill Thompson. There we go. Was it John Knox to Bill Thompson or Bill Thompson to John Knox? Dave?
I very much doubt it was Knoxy to Jock Thompson.
I very much doubt it. I mean, the other one, when I first promoted, me and Knoxy went off onto some submarine. I'll come back to the sink story in a minute.
Right, go on.
We went onto this submarine. I've got all these written down somewhere. These are what we talked about. I've got all written down. And he said, who wants to go for a couple of beers on this submarine? So we said, yeah, we'll go. And so Jock sent me and Knoxy off with a number of SACs, one of whom was female. Yvette. Winterbottom.
Oh.
And our only instruction to me and Knoxy as we left from Jock Thompson was, do not leave Winterbottom behind.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, no worries. Do not leave her behind. In other words, do not exchange her for beer. Not that we would ever do anything like that, because but it was just that sort of way that Jock was with us all. But yeah, so the sink, Archie comes in and he drags this stainless steel sink out of the bushes. And me and Oxy are like, well, what are you doing with that? He went, we'll take it back and we'll hang it up in the one-act bar. Everybody on the deck can sign it and we'll hang it up in the bar as a bit of a gizzard. Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. This is like 1 o'clock in the morning. So off we did. And we picked up and anybody that's been to the Akrotiri Arms knows it's a fair trek back to the Akrotiri main gate. So about half an hour later, we rock up at the main gate at Akrotiri. Policeman comes out. Where do you think you're going? three of us all look at each other, and in unison, the UK. What's that you've got? Silence. Look at each other. Look back at the RAF policeman. It's a sink. Well, and then he says, "Where are you going?" The UK. And after a little, he always went in, phoned somebody, came back out and went, "Yeah, all right, off you go." 20 minutes in, we get this sink. We're still carrying this sink between us. Police car stops us. What you got there? Stunned silence, in unison, a sink. Where are you going? The UK. It's just like, I think the utter disbelief of it was, just go. And they obviously realised we can't really do anything. What we're going to do, arrest them and take them away with the sink. Because he hadn't actually done anything. We just, where did you find it? In some bushes. But yeah, so me, Noxie. Now, Dave Large was on that trip as well. Now,
have you seen it? Can you see his comment?
When you fell over and continued to eat your kebab off the floor. Yes, that might happen. Waste not, want not. Well, you're not going to go and buy a kebab and not eat it. But yeah, hey, you know, the things we do. Oh, the hammer. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. In fact, is that Rangers game finished? If Hamish just tuned in,
it must be. It must be. Is Mr. Hamilton's appearance not timely to move on to the next song?
Oh, yes. Well, yes. Yeah, he's one of them.
Was he not one of the? He
was one of them. Yes.
Involved in the tales of this next song.
He was. I think. Mr. Blades certainly was.
Yeah.
Mr. Neil definitely was.
Oh yes, indeed. Go on then. It's House of Pain and Jump Around, isn't it?
Is Bladesy still in the green room? Ask Bladesy about it.
No, he's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah.
So
he'll be back on the 1st of April.
You know, as we've said, all these songs have an amazing intro. Pobster was on that Cyprus debt as well. And upset some people when he first arrived, but I won't go into that. Pob probably knows what I'm talking about. But that was some debt, by the way. So yeah, House of Pain, Jump Around. The one thing I'll say to the lads or anybody, Lot 22, Mount Pleasant Airfield.
One of the pubs.
When this went off on a Thursday night, it went off. Yeah. I've never been in a bar where it goes off to the level it did there. So to explain to people that are not in the know, Lot 22 is exactly what it is, what it says. It is a lot that was bid for post the Falklands War, a number of ISO containers.
Yeah.
That was Lot 22 in the auction. And then once they'd got everything that was inside the ISO containers, they welded them together apparently and turned them into a massive bar at Mount Pleasant Airfield, which was probably back in those days, 92, 93, the probably one of the most popular bars down there. But yeah, and that tune and that sort of intro immediately takes me to, I would say, sat on Paddy Neal's shoulders, but because the top of the bar was so low, I didn't need to go on anybody's shoulders. I could touch the ceiling without going on top of anybody's shoulders. It was tiny in there.
Am I right in saying, didn't they have to, and they didn't charge, but didn't they have to issue tickets because of the capacity allowed.
Yeah, I think that definitely rings a bell. And so it was the hottest ticket in town, and we used to, because we were from Mount Kent. I think Mount Kent had its own allocation of tickets each week. So we were allocated, I don't know, 6-8 tickets a week. And so whoever was off went down. If you weren't working that night and generally not working the next day, then down you went for a bit of action down in Lot 22 and just to jump around, quite literally to jump around.
It's a tune and a half, that.
Oh, mate, it's just, one-hit wonders, whatever, but what a tune.
What happened?
Bladesy could not stop saying, "I'll serve your ass like John McEnroe." That's all he kept saying right the way through the tour.
So what happened? What sort of things happened in Lot 22, or whilst you were at Kent?
No, I mean, as you would expect in a bar down the Falkland Islands, just a lot of drinking, a lot of fun, a lot of jumping around, and just generally making the most of a bad situation. Because obviously nobody really wanted to go and do 4 months down in the South Atlantic, but if you were going, you might as well make the most of it, crack on, and a little bit of the theme as we've been talking, just crack on with it. I was really lucky that the group of lads I was down there with, as you said, we've said Big Paddy, we've said Hammy, we've said Bladesy, Mickey Senior, who I've not seen for years, top lad down there as well. Andy Moore, do you know Andy Moore?
I remember.
You probably kind of know him.
I think I remember. What I remember about him is Bladesy talking a lot about him after you guys got back from the Falklands.
Yeah, they were big mates.
And I'm sure we've met at some point, but yeah, I know.
He was at David again. He was another one who was at Davy's top table.
Right. Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, that was it. It was it was the Falklands, and it was just making the most of a lot.
Right.
And I think really came at a good time for me because I had about 18 months left in the Air Force, and I wasn't having a great time before I went down there. I was just cruising, and I was just like, I wasn't particularly enjoying. I was working up in the training section with Mr. Barlow at the same time, and we had a similar opinion of the life up there, the regime up there. Sorry?
Which was?
We just didn't enjoy it. We didn't enjoy the hierarchy up there. We didn't get on with them.
Yeah. Mate, you've been very coy all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, because I don't want to, it was just one of those things. It's that's water under the bridge. Because what happened was there was a change of regime when I came back.
Yeah.
With a new senior NCO in Billy Crawford, new flight sergeant, who took me to one side, had obviously heard bad words about me, about that I didn't really want to be. I never wanted to go in the training section anyway. I was quite happy down on shift. And I came back and I was there about a week or a fortnight, and he took me to one side because he took me there when I first arrived back, and he was like, "Look, if you don't want to go, just go. I'll send you back down the squadron, and away you go." And I kind of quite like that straightforward talking. And I said, "Well, no, we'll see. We'll see what it's like." And he took me to one side 2 weeks later, and he said, "I'm going to read you your assessments." He said, "They're not great. I won't lie." He said, "But what I will tell you, if you show me the attitude and the commitment you've shown me in the last 2 weeks, they will improve next year." And they did. And it changed me because I was on my way out. I was going to do my 9 years and leave. At that point, I was done, And yeah, so I think that Falklands tour, because I had such a good laugh and I really enjoyed it, and coupled with a bit of a change of environment when I got back, you know, and I then stayed for another 17 years.
17 years. That's it. That's a change of heart and a half, isn't it?
Well, exactly, you know, and I had good people around me. I you know, I had Billy Crawford, I had Jock Thompson, I had Wee John, who really looked after me at that point, and said, "Look, mate," he said, "you can either just carry on doing nothing and just end up leaving, or you're more than capable of just this is what you need to do." And all around them, you know, those three characters, along with a couple of other people, had all said, "Look, just start doing this. Don't do that, and you can make a career for yourself." And you know, and I did, and they were right, and I did. Dougie Manson was up there as well. He was quite instrumental as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of good people, and that's it. It's who you get on with. If you don't get on with people, then life becomes quite difficult.
Very true indeed. Should we move on to your last song?
Suppose so. I'm looking. We are overrunning time, so yeah, we need to.
Okay. Rock and Roll Star, Oasis.
Again, do you know? I mean, I played you this intro last night, and your face just went, "Yeah, yeah." And I guessed you would. You just went, "Yeah," and I think if there's one, you know, apart from the you know what we talked about last night, I would say if you wanted to summarize my certainly my life in the Air Force, I wouldn't say my career, but my life in the Air Force in a song. Those crashing guitars, the drum just going, Liam belting out those vocals, that pretty much characterizes my life in the Air Force.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it was just, you know, I had a great career, but I had a great time.
Yeah.
Great career, but probably a better time.
Right. And to
top it off, know, and I'd always, you know, I'd always sort of like, since they came on the scene, always liked Oasis, always sort of like really listened to music. Did quite a few debts away up at Lockhew. Now, if you've ever been to Lockhew, you know it's a place you don't really want to spend too much time in. But again, you just crack on, you dust yourself off. As Noxie will tell you, me and Noxie have been stood at the Pan Bash at Lockhew more days than I care to remember. Dave Large was there as well. I mean, really, really good crowd. And, you know, I'd sit on my bunk at night and just listen to Definitely Maybe. It had just come out. And, but then kind of fast forward, and again, real life-changing moment for me was kind of not suddenly, but, and I didn't talk to you about this last night, but it was one of the things I wanted to talk about was the death of my dad.
Okay.
And the death of my dad made me, again, a little bit like you talked about when you said what was Bishop's Court and your experience there like. It was very, very similar. I'd been on that third Falklands tour that we talked about last night with Marky Pattinson.
Oh yeah, that mess.
And the Air Force had changed its strategy on overseas postings, and I was nowhere near going. I'd withdrawn an application, and I just accepted I would never go overseas. And I down the Falklands, and they changed the rules, and it basically went to however long you'd served or since you'd been overseas. And I'd never been overseas in 17, 18 years. And so I knew I'd just jumped to the top of the list. And Marky had been at Glons and Naples and said, look, mate, if you really fancy it, do Glons, live in Maastricht. Mm-hmm. He says, great place, great centre of Europe. You can get everywhere in a couple of hours. You get to Amsterdam in 2 hours. You can get to Paris in 2 hours. You can get to, you know, all over Germany in a couple of hours. And then what happened was I came back, bought my house. I was in the middle of doing my house up when the first posting came up, and I was like, well, I can't because I'm just in the middle of doing my house up. And I'd just finished doing my house up, and I had a phone call from my sister telling me my dad had been taken to hospital. Or in fact, he hadn't been taken to hospital. He'd been taken in as a inpatient. He'd gone as an outpatient, gone really bad, and passed away inside of 2 days, which was a bit of a shock. But again, that whole thing of dust myself down, just crack on, and away I go. And I went back to work, and I was like, right, the next time there's an overseas comes up, I'm off. That's it. Nothing else. Forget the house. I can rent that. I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to go out and enjoy life. Yeah. And the next thing came up, and it was posting to Glons. I applied for it. I kept ringing the desk and saying, look, when are you sending me? She said, well, you might not go. I said, look, I know I'm going. I know I'm as far at the top of the list as you're going to get. And sure enough, I did. Ironically, having been influenced by Mr. Pattinson, I consequently moved into his old house.
You never did.
Yeah. So I lived in, the person that lived in the house before me was Coral Rose. And before her, it was Marky Pattinson. So it was just handed on from one to the next.
Brilliant.
And so, so from that seed being sown by Marky, I ended up in his old house. Went there and I travelled extensively, and that really gave me my appetite for travel. But I then very quickly realised there was a ton of gigs in Germany that you could get into for peanuts in comparison. Yeah. You would fight over tickets to go and see U2, Oasis, Kasabian in the UK. There you could just go on to eventim.de and crack yourself to the nearest. And the Oasis came up. I went, as I said, in Dusseldorf. Turned up on the date. Big line with a white sign in the door to say that they'd cancelled the gig. And I was like, can't believe it. They've cancelled the gig. And they said, we'll let you know. And they let us know. And the date came back on 6 weeks later. And went in there, really excited. I thought, right, we're here at last. And, Liam swaggers on stage. Right, guys, we're so sorry. We're really sorry that we let you down 6 weeks ago. But in return, we are going to give you the gig of your lives. And also the roar goes up, and he just cracks straight in. Because he basically suffered with his throat, and he just stepped up to the microphone one more time. This is for the doc. Put his finger up, and then just belted out Rock and Roll Star. And again, it just takes me back to that whole time when I lived in Europe, travelled around Europe, and just had an absolute time of my life.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I love it. I love it. Listen, I've got one other question to ask, and I think just based on kind of how you finished there, I had a couple, but I'm going to ask you this one because I think it's quite fitting. And we've spoken quite a bit about, different parts of your career. If you could give one bit of advice to somebody considering, say somebody a youngster, we watch this. If you could give one bit of advice to somebody considering a career in the military, what would it be?
JFDI. That's not rehearsed, by the way. Anybody watching, that's not rehearsed, by the way. I was just going to say, just do it. And then I thought, JFDI, just do it. Just absolutely do it. I listen to so many people who have bad words to say about their careers in the military, and I never understand why. Yeah. And all the people that I've seen tonight, their faces popping up.
Yeah.
Brilliant,
isn't it?
And that's what it is. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about Johnny Knox in Australia. It's about Dave Large in Dublin. It's about you. It's about Pob, who I haven't seen in ages. It's about, I'm trying to think who else. Jugsy, I've not seen in ages. But that tells me everything. That tells me everything I need to know about my time in the military. That guys that I haven't spoken to for ages want to spend the time and come and have a look and see what I'm up to. But yeah, if anybody is considering a career in the military, whether it be your daughter,
unlikely, mate. Unlikely.
well, after meeting a group captain we both know and quite a few other people on here know,
Oh yeah,
I still love that story.
Oh, that was funny. I know. Yeah. The other people that we had on tonight, Steve Wilson, Mr. the Chunkster.
Oh, Chunkster.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, your man, Ian, a Growler.
Growler.
Pob, Jugsy, Hammy, Dave, Noxie, as you said. Mr. Fairclough was on earlier on as well.
I saw Mr. Fairclough, always working in the guard room.
Yeah. The good lady wife.
Mrs. R, absolutely. And do you know what? Actually, I was talking about the training section. After my, if you like, my second incarnation, I was fortunate enough, and I mean it genuinely, to work with a real good group of guys up there.
Yeah.
You know, and not just the seniors that I've mentioned who really steered me in the right direction, but Mrs. Richardson, Frankie, who was on earlier.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else was up there. That, you
know,
know,
Emma was on earlier on as well.
Yeah, Emma.
Yeah. And Mr. Barlow, who popped in to say that
he was on. He was ditching me for a Zoom. Yeah. That's fine.
And yeah, we had. I don't know whether or not he's still watching. There's quite a few. There were 17 people are watching at the moment, and I can't see exactly who it is. But anyway, another one of my good friends, Mr. Manning, was watching again. Evening, Stephen. You don't know him, Mo. A great
lucky
guy.
Boy.
Yeah, he's one of my fellow whiskey investors.
Right, okay.
Maybe
not be a bad man then.
Oh, he's a top man. I wondered if he watches most weeks, and he
must be completely confused.
He's a glutton for punishment. Maybe get him on. It would be an absolute blast to have him on. He was watching. Stephen was watching when Hammy, when we did Hammy's tunes, when Hammy was on, and Stephen's a big Celtic fan, and Hammy
right.
obviously being a Rangers man, there was a little bit of banter in the comments. It was great. Anyway, listen, Mo, it's been an absolute pleasure. We didn't run over that much. 1 hour and 12 minutes. That's pretty good.
That's not bad.
It's all right, isn't it?
That's
well, listen,
not bad, yeah.
Thank you very much. Hang around in the green room.
Oh, I will.
Everybody else that has been on, well, you've got your after party, mate. 2 tunes of my choice out of your 5 on Instagram, and they will pull them down. But remember what I've been teasing for a while. We are going to do something with these tunes, and we're going to do something about Mr. Pinkster's Pirate Radio, because, well, why not? So,
absolutely,
indeed. Thank you all for
coming. Just before we go, mate.
Yeah.
I just want to say one. I wanted to talk about quite a few people that have. I mentioned the likes of Taff Nicholas. You know,
that are no longer with
the likes of Dave Phillips, Daz Hucknall, CJ. But unfortunately, I heard of another one today.
Oh dear.
Genuinely, again, a guy I didn't know well. Noxie. If Noxie's still watching, I don't know if Noxie knows, but I know Noxie knows the boy. Right. A guy called Gaz McDougall apparently passed away earlier today.
No way. Gary
McDougall, yeah.
Oh my Lord, he was.
You know, I only met him a couple of times, but I just remember him being just such a genuine guy. And just another one gone way too soon. Way too soon. And I'm sorry if I dropped it on people, but I just felt really strong that I just wanted to just send my regards to and my condolences to Gaz's family, because what a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah,
I thought Noxie would.
Well, listen, mate, do you know what? as much as it's sad, and as much as it's obviously a bit of a low tone to kind of end on, it just stresses how important, how we started this and talking about what we're doing and getting people on and using this medium to kind of tell stories, to reconnect people. It's why this is so important, mate, because none of us are getting any younger. We are losing people. And, you know, as I say to so many people, that, you know, we kind of went from being like wee boys, really, to becoming men together, formative years,
Old men.
you know, and now old men. And that's what I was saying. We need to continue to reconnect. We need to continue
absolutely, mate. And you know,
these stories, to keep the memory, you know, of these ones that are no longer with us. We need to keep that memory alive.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And you know, I kind of considered when I quite literally read it about an hour before I came on tonight, and I just didn't want to leave it go. I just thought, you know, we've lost so many recently, really.
Yeah, I know.
And they do, John. Absolutely, they'll live on in our memories and in our stories.
Listen, Mo, have you got a glass? Unfortunately, I've just got a bottle of juice. But have you got a drink?
I don't. Give me a second.
Yeah. Don't worry. I mean, go and fill your boots, mate. Yeah, take 5 minutes if you want. We're only live with 17 people. Crack on, Mo. It's worth waiting. There's another comment that's come up. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for staying on. 1 hour 16.
John. Where are we?
Have you chosen something nice?
A 15 Dalwhinnie.
There you go.
Now, there's a bit of a story there, because there's always a bit of a story. Ask Noxie and Dave Large about Dalwhinnie and their memories of Dalwhinnie and the bacon sandwiches at the cafe stop.
We'll maybe do that another time, mate. For now, I've got
where are we?
We'll finish
to
off.
Absent friends. Indeed, Dave. To absent friends.
Absent friends. Mo, thank you. Guys, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.